Today we are going to cover section 4.2, solving inequalities using addition and subtraction. Now the good news is you've already learned the rules. To solve inequalities you use the same steps as you use for solving equations. We just add graphing at the end. So step number 1 is you make a teeter-totter. Step number 2, you do the pinky test by covering the variable and seeing what else is on that side with it. And then you isolate the variable by adding or subtracting. So you get the variable alone. And finally you need to graph. So this example is not on your notes. So just watch it with me. First I will do teeter-totter. Pinky test says that I need to get this alone, and it's being subtracted by 2.3, so I will add 2.3, use opposite operations. If you do something on one side, sorry, that should be a 3. You need to do it on the other side. So these cancel out, giving me x. Now don't bring down the equal sign, bring down your greater than sign. And here we add 7 plus 2 is 9, and 1 plus 3 is 4. So now I know x is greater than 9.4. Now the final step is to graph. Let's say this is 10 on my graph. 9.4 would be about in the middle. I have a greater than sign, which is an open circle, and greater than would be everything to the right. So that is how you will be working out your equation. So let's look at these two together. Go ahead and try and solve these two, and then turn it on to check it. Don't move on to the next, because we do have a little bit of something in here we need to look at. Okay, you should have solved these now. The first one you should have added 5. So I have x is less than 2. So you go to 2, and because it's less than, you have an open circle and everything to the left. On the next one, you should have drawn your teeter-totter, and I'm going to add 3.8 to both sides. Here it cancels, and I have b is less than or equal to, and this is going to give me 5.5. So I have less than or equal to, so I know it's going to be a closed circle. And 5.5 is right between 5 and 6. So I'm going to have a closed circle, and less than is going to have me shade everything to the left. So that's what you're going to be doing in this chapter. I do have an interesting situation that arises. Let's look at this next problem together. When you draw your teeter-totter, you'll notice that your variable is on the right. And so to get my variable all alone, I'm going to add 1/4. When I do that, negative 1/2 plus a fourth leaves me negative 1/4. And that's going to be greater than z. Now, if your variable's on the right, it can get complicated to graph. You can do two things. You can either read it backwards. Instead of saying negative 1/4 is greater than z, you can say z is less than negative 1/4, which means you could go to negative 1/4, open circle, and your line is actually going to go to the left because it's less than. Now, if you don't want to read it backwards, you could rewrite it by flipping this entire equation. So that means I would put z on this side and negative 1/4 on this side. And when you flip that, you then have to flip your inequality. So now it says z is less than negative 1/4, and it's more clear that my line needs to go to the left. So try the next one, and then we'll look at it together. Okay, so here I have my x on the right. I'm going to subtract 14. 13 minus 14 is negative 1, is less than or equal to x. So if I were to rewrite that and flip that, I would have x is greater than or equal to negative 1. So you should have had a closed circle at negative 1, and you should have graphed everything to the right. Or you could read this backwards and say x is greater than or equal to negative 1, just reading it backwards. All right, let's look at these two. On this first one, you've got your variable on the right. Go ahead and work this out and then check it. Okay, you should have added 10 to both sides, which gives you 2.5 is greater than or equal to d. And if you were to rewrite that, it would be d is less than or equal to 2.5. Or you can just read it backwards. d is less than or equal to 2.5. 2.5 is between 2 and 3. It's going to be a closed circle. I've got everything to the left. Now finally on this one, this goes back to what we're used to. My variable's on the left. So I just go ahead and try and get my variable alone by subtracting 3/4. So these are gone, and I have x is greater than 3/4. I don't want to rewrite this because my variable already is on the left. I don't want to read it backwards. I just go to 3/4. Now 3/4 is 0.75 if you change it to decimal form, just to help you think where that is, which is going to be really close to 1, but not quite 1. It's going to be an open circle, and it's going to be everything to the right because it's greater than. Now here's a story problem. A small airplane can hold 44 passengers, and 15 passengers board the plane. So it says on part A, to write and solve an inequality that represents the additional number of passengers that can board the plane. Now this is not on your notes, but I'd like to look at it. The most passengers that can board is 44, so everything else can't be greater than that, so it's got to be less than or equal to the 44. So I'm trying to figure out how many more passengers could, and it says to write an inequality, so don't just solve it and subtract and say the maximum number, but I know I have 15 already, and I can add some more. I don't know how many more, so I'll use x. And I know that number has to be less than or equal to 44, so that would be your inequality that you would use here. Part B says, can 30 more passengers board the plane? Well, if I plug the 30 in here, 15 plus 30 is 45, and that's not less than or equal to 44. So it doesn't work. So you would say no. That'll be one too many people for the plane. All right, so your homework is on page 134 through 135. You need to do 3 through 23, the odds, and then get on to Schoology and do homework quiz 4.2, and then we will see you next time.